One of the things that Catholics are known for is not knowing their faith. Even as a Protestant, one of the things we knew about Catholics was they don't know their Bible. And I'm not going to lie to you, converting did not really dispel that myth. Yeah, I remember quite recently, actually, I was chatting with a woman at my university. She had been to Catholic school and everything. And I was mentioning about how they're doing some archaeological work at Christ's tomb and uncovering the slab on which Christ's body was laid. One of the things she asked me was, matter-of-factly, how I thought about them digging up Jesus' dead body. Now that she didn't disagree with the idea that Jesus rose from the dead, she didn't even know that it was a thing to believe among Christians or Catholics. Yeah, anyway, in case you haven't guessed, this video is going to be about my experiences teaching in a Novus Catechism class and basically being a Novus Sunday school teacher. Now, I will say this before I'm on the get-go. I am a huge fan of progressive methods when it comes to teaching the faith. I grew up Pentecostal. I had a very interactive way. I was taught in a very interactive way. Lots of fun, lots of games, and it did a good job. I learned basic Bible stories, basic facts about the faith, and it was a lot of fun. It really stuck with me, even a few classes. And that's something I do want to pass on to the next generation. I'm actually thinking about maybe at some point in the future making some videos in that vein. That being said, the Novus Catechism that I was put into that program was the worst of both worlds, and then some. It would have been better had you just been a glorified daycare, honestly. So basically, this is what happened. So I remember I was around 16, 17 years old at the time. I had just decided I would become a Catholic. I had been a catechumen for months, and they were looking for people to teach in their Sunday school program because they were short on staff. I initially declined and said, no, I shouldn't do this, on the grounds that I was a catechumen. I'm not even baptized. I'm still learning the Catholic faith myself. Then I was asked if my mother, who was not a Catholic at all, could teach the program. And yes, they knew that she was not a Catholic. At that point, I decided, okay, I at least want to believe the Catholic faith. I'm trying to believe in it. I may not know everything, but I will try to at least try to get them the best information as I know, even as I'm learning. So it's put in charge of the program. The teachers they put in charge were other confirmation era kids who skipped class. I find that, I'm not sure what it's like in your diocese, who's put in charge of the Novus programs in your area. In the parish I went to, and this was throughout the area, other parishes nearby as well do the same thing. They basically found all the cool kids from high school who were going to the youth group or whatever, who were in confirmation class, without any regard whatsoever to their personal morals, knowledge of the faith, and I mean bad morals. I knew that there are people who were in charge of the Sunday school program who, I know for a fact they were doing drugs. Two, I knew they often would not show up to the Sunday school class themselves. There were cases where people who were put in charge of young children, and they were to teach the class that day, and they decided they just didn't care, did not bother to show up. And the ones who did show up, I remember jointly put in charge of some of the kids with one of them. She openly said I remember on one case, she was openly teaching the kids to not believe the Catholic faith, and was very bold about doing so. She flat out said she didn't care what the church taught. These are the people who are there putting in charge of teaching children. That was the staff. And it got worse. Even the good one, and I do know there's one person was partnered with for a few years. I'll say this, she was of goodwill, but honestly, she needed to brush up on the faith herself. So for example, in this particular class, we were teaching about Jesus overturning the tables. I done a little skit showing Jesus about overturning the tables, money changers tables in the temple, showing them about, or teaching about anger. And yes, there is righteous anger, I was going to point out. What this teacher said, matter of factly, is that when Jesus did this, he committed a sin. They had to repent of what he did. I burst out. I make a policy of generally not to correct the other teacher in front of the kids, but when it is heresy, the salvation and orthodoxy of younger impressionable children comes before them getting to say face. I had to show no, Mrs. So and so. The faith teaches that Jesus never sinned. That's the faith. Now, to be fair, this woman did feel bad about that, and she did feel embarrassed. To her credit, she knew she should know the faith, and she knew she didn't know it. And so I'll get, and I actually will give credit where it's due. She was trying to do the best with what she had. There are things I made mistakes on when I was teaching that, in retrospect, I would have corrected myself on. But there was just a lot of people who just did not care about the kids in the program. So, and it's not just, and it wasn't just the people in charge. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of bullying going on. I remember being lectured and called aside by the head of the program, being told I was hated by everyone. I'm 16, 17 years old, new to a Catholic. I'm already, and this person was also my high school counselor, I might add, who was doing this, and told I should become a hermit, that a vocation to a hermetical life, as I sucked around people, and that way never have to deal with people ever again. Every other Sunday. Every other Sunday, I was called aside and lectured on that. What was worse than the other people teaching it was the program itself. We had a program known as the Flom program. I'll just give a sampling of some of the things I read. I literally hid some of the programs as an excuse, so we didn't have to use them at Sunday. I could make something, whip something up myself, not because I had any ego about doing it well, etc. Like I read the program. There were parts of the program, there were ideas in the program that were good, themselves, and that called for like interactive learning methods, which I supported, and I had no problem with that. Telling the kids that first communion children that the Eucharist is just special bread. That's another matter. John 6:54-69. Yeah, Jesus literally taught, this is my body, this is my blood. You have to literally eat and drink it. It's literal in the Catholic belief. They were teaching full-on heresy, and I pointed out to the kids that and I remember people in the program told me, oh, they're kids, they just can't accept this yet. My response to them was, quote, when I was their age, I was able to accept it. And I wasn't even raised a Catholic at the time. I wasn't even Catholic at the time. And when I was around their age, I accepted real presence. I accepted it very early on. So why can't they accept it? What's so high mighty about them? And I flat out told them in class, it's like a Jesus. I told them, like, I used the term Jesus burger to describe the Blessed Sacrament to them. To help enforce the idea that you're literally eating Jesus' flesh and drinking his blood. Show respect. And another catechism class. There was a program for All Saints Day. Glad they're celebrating All Saints, but not glad how they taught it to the kids. They taught that they were all saints. And they had people venerate and gave examples of saints to venerate, including Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Don't get me wrong. Like, if someone wants to admire Gandhi, or Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights work that they did, that is great. I do agree. As examples of great civil rights leaders, I think they should be held up held up for praise in that regard, but they are not Catholic saints. It is inaccurate and flat out false and misleading to explain to children that these are what saints are. And you don't even have to use Baltimore Catechism explained to the kids, which, by the way, accurately describes it and does have kids in mind for when it's being taught. They can be taught what saints are, and guess what? There's plenty of stories in the Bible about saint veneration to explain it. So, for example, you could do a skit on the angels praising God in heaven, and for the Book of Revelation, chapter 8, verse 4. You could do a skit of Joshua before the walls of Jericho, how he bowed before the angel. You can do there are a number of factors about holy men who were venerated, or whose bodies or clothing were venerated and touched, and healing miracles took place that you can use interactively in an entertaining way to teach the kids about the intercession of saints. Then there was one Sunday, I look at the program for that week, and it was literally on how all religions get us to heaven. Yeah, I just took that one and tore it up. No regrets, no apologies for it. I remember one thing I neglected to do, which feel free to criticize me, but I'll give a bit of defense at the end. I did not bother teaching the kids the Our Father when I was teaching a Sunday school program, and it was found at First Communion they didn't know how to say the Our Father. Okay, my reasoning for not doing that to them and teaching more extemporaneous prayer, probably wouldn't do that again for various reasons. That being said, these are kids from Catholic families. How do they not know the Our Father? I remember, and it's not like the Our Father isn't that unique of a Catholic prayer. It's essentially the Lord's Prayer with the last line cut off in Protestantism. I was taught the Lord's Prayer. I knew the Lord's Prayer when I was a little kid. Here's the thing: I don't actually remember learning it. It was just something you prayed all the time. It was every time you went to church, every day. You prayed the Lord's Prayer all the time. I prayed the Lord's Prayer all the time as a kid. I cannot remember the time I was sat down and taught it. I was just prayed it, and I have a decent memory even from when I was a little kid. It was just something you did, it's something you breathed. Why aren't those Catholic families teaching the kids the Our Father? Someone who teaches kids catechism should not have to. Like, maybe they should, in a certain sense. I agree, I will grant that certainly at this point. But in a certain sense, they shouldn't. They should know how to say the Our Father. I even remember hearing one story of one family who got a dispensation from the local bishop from sending the kids to catechism class because the catechism class was so heretical they didn't want their kids learning heresy. They got that dispensation, to the bishop's credit. But yeah, if it's that bad that you need to ask, if you even need to ask for dispensation from the bishop to send your kids to catechism class because you don't want the kids being taught heresy, that should be a massive warning to the bishop to remove that person. Either they're ignorant, in which case they need to relearn the faith, or they're actively, intentionally teaching heresy, in which they should absolutely be removed. I don't care if the result is no Sunday school program left. And honestly, the bishop should probably make a program if it gets to that point and say, okay, if no one in the diocese can actually teach the Catholic faith, the bishop does have a duty. He can sit down, record a video program, and just say, okay, watch this instead and learn it. Because a bishop, and if any bishop's watching, and some might say this to liberate them from certain tasks, a bishop's job is not to be a glorified pencil pusher. His job is to teach the faith. He is supposed to be a successor of the 12 apostles. He is supposed to teach it. And the priests and the deacons are supposed to assist him in that. So he is supposed to be the primary person doing this in the diocese. But it's not happening. Now, I will say that, I'm also aware of certain other things that were done in the program, which certain more traditional people might have a little more sympathy for. For example, I was called in when I was called in to teach catechism at the Nostra Parish. I was specifically called in to deal with two children who were driving everyone crazy, and no one else could handle them. They would stand on desks, stare teachers down. I basically said my attitude. I was able to teach them, and I got them excited about catechism again. Then they shut me down. But my attitude was very much, and I remember when I went to SSPX, there was another woman. Her name was Maureen. She has unfortunately since passed on. Please say a few Hail Marys for her repose if you're watching this. She had the same attitude as I did because she taught catechism as well. She refused to kick out the bad kids from the catechism class. Her attitude was very much, as it is mine, that of all the kids that need catechism, it's them. Your job's to teach it. You got the kids. If you're a Sunday school teacher or a catechist, you got those kids for 1 hour, once a week. And more often than not, their parents are pretty lazy for getting them to class. You got 1 hour a week for not even a full year to inspire love of the faith of the kids so they will appreciate and want to learn about it more in the future. You got more important things to do than teach the kids how to sit down to sit down in his chair for an hour after they've already sat down for an hour at mass. Now, don't get me wrong, kids need to be self-disciplined and all that, but in this day and age, that is not the priority of a catechist. The priority is to get them the Catholic faith. On Judgment Day, they'll be asked about faith and morals, not how long they could sit still in a chair when they were like 6 or 7 years old. That is your duty. That is why you are there. If you want a babysitter and a glorified babysitter, then they should start paying those catechists $10 an hour and stop telling them that they are catechists or that they're Sunday school teachers. She didn't kick out the bad kids either. I just worked their rambunctiousness into the program. Like, hey, they're entertaining. They get attention. Hey, work in the program. Lots of interactive Bible stories with great lessons behind them. I remember teaching about St. Gregory the Great, who was the sainted pope who, when he was elected pope, hid out in the hills around Rome for 3 days and had to be dragged to his consecration. The naughty kids in the class were just excited. They just loved getting me to drag me across the floor screaming. And that's how I taught them that lesson. And honestly, I remember sitting the class and I was just observing one class, another teacher take the lead. And I remember one of the kids, she was asked her parents right after, "What did you learn in Sunday school this week?" Her response, "Nothing." I don't care who you are or how you think kids should and should not be taught. But if that is the answer to a kid after catechism, and by the way, this was not a bad kid. This was one of the well-behaved ones who was sitting down, listening, constantly paying attention. Then you are a failure as a catechist. You are a failure as a Sunday school teacher. Period. Full stop. That is your responsibility. A well-behaved kid who sits down for an hour in Sunday school should come out of class having at least learned something, or at least have been told something entertaining or interesting about the faith. Something. So next week, after that, I took the new admittedly the new catechism, took as many notes as I could about the end of the world, and gave a short lecture about how the world will end. And I think they taught a bunch of other stuff as well. Next week after that class, I asked that same kid, "Did you learn anything in Sunday school today?" Yep. They were nodding. They were nodding. And that's the job of a catechist. Now, a bit of advice for Sunday school teachers, because this is getting close to be a 20-minute video, I do want to wrap up with some thoughts on how people can pass on the Catholic faith. My personal take is particularly if you're a layman, particularly if you're one of the laity, do what you can. Like, you're not a priest or you're not called to preach it from a pulpit. But you are called on to pass on the Catholic faith with the tools you have right now. I know there's a Calvinist video gamer named called Redeem Zoomer. He literally plays video games and talks about theology as he does it and posts it online. It's heretical Calvinistic theology, but like, why can't a traditional Catholic do that? We literally have no excuse. Or you could do it or you could do it more interactive class with the kids or something. Make YouTube videos like I'm trying to do. Just explain the Catholic faith outright. Or maybe you could even do a sit down. Or maybe if you're teaching Sunday school, you could do an old sit down lesson. What matters is that the kids. Part of this sounds close to a swear word. It's not. If they freaking learn. That's the main thing. They need to learn the faith. Period. Full stop. No excuses. Just get the job done. And as lady, yes, it is your job. And if you're parents, you've got zero excuse. Completely zero. And by the way, even if you're not, I remember asking an SSPX priest for permission to evangelize and for his guidance on it. The mission priest in my area. In case anyone's asking me if I have ever gotten guidance from SSPX priests and I do this, I absolutely have. I've asked many priests for guidance and for a blessing, and it's easily given. And the attitude is pretty much summed up from traditional priests in this conversation I had. As Father, I'd want to evangelize the faith and share it with Protestants and non-Catholics. He asked me this, are you confirmed? He said, yes. Then go do it. Everyone's called to be confirmed. This is something that everyone is obliged to do on some level. If your parents absolutely with your kids, do whatever darn well takes. But they need to know the Catholic faith. They need to know the traditional Catholic faith. Period. Full stop. And if you don't know it, you are obliged to teach yourself. And in this day and age, the basic what is not enough anymore. And often they're not even being taught that. I'm sorry to say. Traditional Catholics are better at it than the Novus Ordo in my experience, but they still have a lot to do with the why. And honestly, with how we got the gospel, how we got the Bible came down to us, how we defend against atheism philosophically. These are questions that kids ask from parents, and parents, some of them, again, I'm not naming names, want to just sit down and act like, oh, they're simple farmers in a peasant era Catholics. Here's the thing, no, you're not. And that's not the world your kids live in. And that's not the world they're going to live in. And you have an obligation to prepare them for the world they are going to live in. You need to know the faith. You need to pass it on to them. Period. Full stop. Do whatever you need to do to pass it on, but do it. Some practical advice. For those in the Novus Ordo Sunday School program, I'm sorry to say, like, it is an apostolate built on sand. And I know many people of any goodwill of any level, of all levels of orthodoxy, in my area who taught catechism in Sunday school, and they do a really good job of driving them away. Of anyone who's remotely good in any sense of the term. Be it be good in orthodoxy, being good in being creative and how to teach ways to teach the kids. My honest opinion is work well with the parents, work well with the kids, do what you can. You know, they're going to hate you. Jesus said the world would hate us. Teach the faith. You're going to get fired anyway. Just accept it. But go up with a bang. Go up teaching the kids the faith so they'll know what the faith is. And if you really feel a calling to it, and it's something you really feel heartbroken over not being able to do anymore, make a YouTube channel. And teach a lesson. Get some family or some people together and find a creative way to make YouTube videos for kids. To teach on how to teach them the Catholic faith in a fun and creative way. Honestly, that's an apostolate I think we as traditional Catholics desperately need. Especially if you want to make Bible stories for kids from a traditional Catholic standpoint. I'm glad we have Superbook that the Protestants make, but every now and again, I gotta pause that video and say and comment and say, this doesn't line up with the Catholic faith. Notably, like with Joshua before the walls of Jericho, and how they portray Pentecost. We need Catholics, traditional Catholics, making YouTube content and doing that. Parents, make sure your kids at least know the basic Bible stories and Baltimore Catechism. Basic Bible stories and Baltimore Catechism, and give them a bit of a Cliff's Notes version of where to find it in the Catholic faith. And yeah, basic apologetics against atheism. If your kids don't know who Lee Strobel is, and for the Case for Christ and the Case for Creator, if not, at least watch the YouTube videos. Like even if you want to have even if you're raising iPad kids, there are resources. There's literally no excuse. Teach it to them. It's never been easier. You can literally raise an iPad kid and just put them on Superbook. Give them the movie The Case for Christ, and everything else, and you can teach them about the faith. There's so many apologists on YouTube now. Just get them to learn, even at a young early age. And please read them Lives of the Saints, stories of the lives of the saints for kids, and Bible stories for kids. Do not wait for the first communion before you start doing so. Do not wait for their first communion before they give them the first traditional Catholic children's Bible. It should be a baptism gift. And when I say baptism gift for the kid, I mean, yes, I know what that means. I mean, as a baby. Give it to them. Read them stories before they can speak. That is your job. That is what I say to parents. To anyone who is just a layman like me, wants to learn. There's a lot of stuff to Google. There's a lot of great resources. Scripture Catholic with the John Sal's Apologetics. The Protestants, they may be Protestant heretics, but they may do great work for apologetics against atheism. Catholic Apologetics Info, Our Lady of the Rosary Library, Catholic website apostolates to evangelize that are run by traditional Catholics are bar none the best resources I've ever seen. I'll try to put some links down below for you to look at. And to anyone who has been kicked out of the program like me, and I know there are some watching who've been in this situation, don't stop. Do what you would do on YouTube. You want to teach, if you're good and you're kicked out, especially if you're kicked out because of your orthodoxy, talk to a traditional Catholic priest, get his blessing. And if you don't got one, make your right decisions yourself. If you're Orthodox and know the faith, just teach. If you don't have access to a traditional priest, you can make your own judgments based on the information you have. Now, if you are a catechist of any sort, you will know that you have an obligation to educate yourself. And it's something you should know how to do very well. If you have not read the Bible cover to cover, if you're not familiar with works like Pascendi, Mortem Animos, the Church Fathers, and if you're not read the Baltimore Catechism, and you're familiar with it, if you're not familiar with basic apologetic arguments against atheism, against Protestantism, against Islam, against Judaism, you're not prepared to teach, period. And any priest who gives you a blessing to do that is probably giving it to you too early, which, okay, fine, but you need to know. But honestly, if you've been confirmed as traditional Catholic, yes, based on you have an obligation to share the faith to the best of your ability with what you've got. Do it. Make YouTube videos. Teach the kids. And if you're in the Novus Ordo program, and teach your kids what you got as long as you can, but be prepared and have an exit strategy for you to keep on teaching and share that faith. Because you have a gift for teaching young children. Don't waste it. Don't waste it. That's my honest advice. My honest advice to such people is, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I'll say it again, make a YouTube channel. Make Orthodox, traditional Catholic content. Make YouTube videos. Share the faith. Lives of the Saints, Bible stories, with lessons and apologetics at the end. And if you are good at it, do it. We need all styles. There's a lot of great material out there now on YouTube for sit-down, serious catechists, but there's not a lot aimed at children among traditional Catholics that I'm aware of at this moment. That needs to change. Maybe God's calling you to do that. Anyway, that is such a decision is between you, and if you can get in touch with an SSPX priest, talk with them about like how do you start doing it. And please, any SSPX priest watching, I know, please don't be afraid of the internet. There's a lot of good traditional. We need more people doing traditional Catholic apologetics online. Anyway, God bless. Have a great day. And if you've got a chance to go to an SSPX chapel or church near you, please, 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 please do so. And if you're an SSPXer, please, 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 I'm begging you, do something, anything, to share the traditional Catholic faith with someone today. Even if it's like sharing a YouTube video, it doesn't have to be this channel. If you think my channel's garbage, fine. Find someone you think is good and share it with someone. Invite someone to a traditional Latin Mass. Oh, they're Protestant, they'll say no. Invite them anyway. I did not say yes to my first Latin Mass when I was invited. I did not say yes to my first Catholic Mass when I was invited. But someone has to be the first to invite. Anyway, God bless. You were in my prayers.